Welcome to the Huge Knot Reviews. This is the first covering the N3 book, the core. What is it? The core book and the rulebook, the key books that make up Infinity. You've probably seen them already, but I've now read them. Well, I've completely read through the core book, and this is been really great. And I haven't finished reading the rulebook yet, but I'm just going to cover sort of roughly how it seems to operate. Just trying to keep everything in shot. I'm not going to make this last too long. So the core book, I'm not going to go into in much detail because I feel the Corpse Belly is kind enough to give us the rules, and I don't want to give away too much about the background material, which is kind of what you need to buy these books for. But I'm just going to go over the sort of the structure of the book a little bit. It's really well done. It's presented as if it's an internet guide, so I quite like that it's a book imitating the internet rather than the internet imitating a book, which is it's just a nice change, I think. Keeps very real. Yes, it has the sort of dry elements of filling out the background story, but each thing's presented as if it's an article on the Mayor Network. The Mayor Network is the sort of the equivalent of the internet, if you like, which is run by the AI. And like I said, I don't want to go too much into this. So it gives you sort of an introduction and an overview of the Infinity world in the introductory area. Lots of lovely artwork. Gives you a sense of things. Then you get a lot of these sort of snippets where you have the sort of political and military tensions on the rise on the Svalaheimer borders. Recent statements have kindled hostility between Eugene and Pan-Oceania, and it sort of has the in brackets more. Like, it's always about more information quests, much like when you're on the internet and you see something and it's like, oh, there's always the tab to open it up and see if you want more. And I very much like that piece of presentation. Again, it sort of covers things like how the universe of Infinity works. You get beautiful artwork and beautiful pictures, miniatures in situ. God, I hope mine end up looking like that. Each section for each of the world powers is sort of after the introduction. Each section starts off with a lovely full page piece of artwork, which I guess epitomizes the feel of that faction. Then it sort of gives a brief description of how the faction views itself, how the faction functions in a political way, and moves into how that faction interacts with other factions. And this is pretty consistent throughout. I mean, this is the largest faction, so they get a page about all the different planets that they are on. Also covers specific technological innovations and specialisms of each faction. And then it moves on, sort of detailing the militaries, and then it goes into detailed descriptions of the different military units, and these are actually the military units which make up the forces of each faction. So you get a nice bit of background about what they're about, what the differences are, and you'll see certain similarities. Every faction has light infantry, medium infantry, heavy infantry, tags, etc., etc. But this gives you the character of the different factions, and gives you an explanation of the sort of the key people, and then you move on to the next faction. Again, you get a full page artwork, and that's kind of how the book continues to roll out. It explains the sort of the planets, how they've got where they've got, and yeah. So I'm just going to keep flicking through, and I really enjoyed this book. As I said, it's presented very much in a sort of this is your guide, hosted by Sybil. Sybil is the online avatar of sort of the Mayor Network, who guides you through. It feels very much like you're reading something which is meant to gear you up for living in a world which you're you've been isolated from. It even starts off at the beginning with oh, this guide is for those who have either been in long-term cryogenic stasis or have not been in this world for whatever reason, like maybe you're a resurrected L-host body, and you can find out what they are by reading this. Again, it's sort of lovely full-page artwork. Really like the sense of their universe, their own. It's very much sort of huge, modern-esque cities. Not super high-tech, sort of cyberpunk high-tech. Very anime derivative. Although I'd also say, if you've read things like Hyperion by Dan Simmons, it has that sort of ouster AI. Can you trust AIs? What's the relationship between AIs and the living? I mean, as you can see as I'm flicking through, there's just tons and tons of lovely artwork. It's very neatly laid out. If you notice, there's colour tabs. So once you know what factions interest you, or if there's something you're interested in about a faction, it's very easy to reference. Tons and tons of material. I mean, it took me a couple of days to get through this. Obviously, I have other things I have to do as well. But it really is a good read. All the stuff about the background for all the different units of troops as well, it's really great because it kind of fills in cultural questions, if you like. It even moves into sort of the mercenary factions and gives you a breakdown of how mercenaries function within the human sphere, or the realms of humanity, and gives you a brief background of how they've come to be in and how they're sanctioned and how they fit in, and some of the sort of more well-known mercenary units from within the human sphere. And well, you know, I love Miyamoto Musashi, and it's awesome that he's been recreated and then set loose upon the world. Along with Sun Tzu, who is been recreated for the Yuqing, and Jean d'Arc. These are great historical characters to have brought in, and I like the way they've brought them in as sort of AI-generated, body hosted. Then the final section is sort of, would you like to know more? It really covers a brief history of how they've arrived where they are now, the status of the world, and some key fracture points like Paradiso, where the invasion of the aliens, the big baddies, the EI, the IE, sorry, it is the EI, the evolved intelligence, which is cruising around, taking over the whole galaxy, really. I'm not even sure whether it's from our galaxy or another galaxy. But there's enough information in here to really get your teeth stuck into, really find out about the world. And I really love that it's very much a modern world with the problems that we find ourselves facing today, where all-out war isn't really an option. It's too deadly, it's too dangerous. We can't trust people to not press the button. And so we're reduced to a sort of economic black ops, behind closed doors, subversive, let's ruin entire populations' days because we can't actually sustain what we have. And then also there's a brief covering of lovely werewolf people, the Antipodes, who are the sort of only alien species encountered by humans, and it's kind of a sad story about them. I was a little bit saddened by how the humans treated them, and I'd actually really like to know more about them, and it's led me to thinking I'd really like to do an Ariadne army, which I haven't actually started doing yet, but also really like to do something set on Dawn, which is where the Ariadnes are based, where it's more focused on the Antipodes rather than on the humans. So there's a quick overview of the N3 core book, and then the N3 rulebook. Again, I'm not going to go over this in detail. You can access this online via the internet. It covers the entirety of the rules, as you would expect. Well, I say the entirety. There is an expansion in the human sphere. Skip past this. Again, it has the color-coded tabs, which are very useful. The whole first section is actually just a quick intro battle system. It takes you step by step through, well, a turn or so really, but it gives you fast entry if you want that. And you can skip into the basic rules, which covers full interactions. I really like the way this is laid out. The basic rules really explains terminology and how to interpret all of the key words. So it's like a combination of a glossary of terms so that all the terms make sense and slot into the rule system as a whole. And then from there it moves into combat. And this section basically tells you exactly how all areas of combat function. Again, it's very well described, lots of illustrations, and as long as you've read the basic rules section, the combat section makes sense. If you haven't read the basic rules section, you'll find it a bit confusing because you will not understand some of the terminology in the way it's used. And it moves into characteristics and skills. Again, this is great because it keeps everything together. Sometimes you get a game and the rulebook's a little bit in disorder or disarray. Whereas I've been finding this really easy to reference, really easy to access. I'm just going to skip through, you don't need to see the whole thing. But I mean, as you can see, I mean, there's tons of stuff. It explains a lot of things. And it is divided into a sort of a basic and advanced section. So you come through the characteristics and skills and into the weapons, and by the time you've read through the weapons and equipment, you've covered all of the basic rules. And I'm going to in fact play, hopefully you should be able to see them by now, some games which are, I've got to get the stuff painted, but it'll be like, you know, 3 figures side or what have you, just to demonstrate all the basic rules. And I'm going to play a few just using the basic rules before I get stuck into, oh, I missed a section, sorry, I forgot. There's the end game as well. This explains how you terminate games or what finishes a game. A lot of the scenarios they operate have you know, they're like turn limits. But also they have retreat factors, so if you get absolutely butchered early on, you might find that your whole team runs away. But I really like that. It's a very fast and paced and hard hitting game. In the advanced rules section, this starts to cover all the in-depth stuff. It covers your hacking, details of hacking programs, what you can do to different people, and yeah, this is where it starts. This is what makes this game amazing to me, is the core system you could just use as a modern warfare system if you liked, and it would cover all your bases. You don't need anything more than that. Well, actually, you might need some extra advanced rules because this also covers special terrain rules. So if you're dealing with jungle terrain, like Dawn or sorry, I'm moving to keeping the light source here. Yeah, I'm in a window, the light's tracking, it's my fault. But if you're in somewhere like Dawn or Snowy, or if you just wanted to play a Modern Warfare and you wanted a jungle setting or what have you, there are enough rules in here to cover all of your sort of very difficult terrain. I mean, you could even do this with, use it for something like World War II or World War One. If you just wanted a very small unit, in-depth action, where again it's quite a complex set of rules. It's very in-depth, but it covers all your bases, and it does so in a way which, where you play, it's a very fast-paced game. a lot happens very quickly, and you achieve you are always doing something, even if it's not your turn. You're always engaged with the game. You're always playing. You're always paying attention, and that's the other thing I really like about it. And then the sort of final sections are the appendices here, which is covering all your game stats. It explains all of your states that you can be in and sort of what different markers mean what. There are a lot of markers in this game. You may find that in my videos or my battle reports, I will use markers, but I won't have markers on table. I'm probably going to put them on as part of like your heads-up display style response, so that it's a little bit more thematic. Good explanation of sort of setting up a game table, just to make the point of have a lot of terrain. This is a terrain heavy game. Hopefully I'm going to have lots of amazing scratch built scenery in the not too distant future, and you will be able to see that being made. Then it cuts into scenarios. This is sort of your basic. See, I've had to build, this is the one that did my nut. Yeah, narrow access, that's good, because I've built a tower block just for that. But actually, when you're designing boards and scenery, really do look at scenarios. It's actually really important that your scenery facilitates. Like, I think this is a really difficult one to set up, and I'm giving some serious thought to building some custom scenery just to make this make sense. And I might explain that another time once I've got some designs. Then you get into army lists, and again, army lists, these are great, covers everything. Although do remember, when you're building your armies, go online, use the army list builder. It's really, really good. The other thing about the army list builder is it will link you through to the online rules, any rules clarifications you need. I mean, a lot of the way I've learnt the rules is actually by using the army builder and taking the links through to the rule sets. But I do like paper format, I like browsing it. I also find paper's easiest to reference. It's a good index, it gets you wherever you want. And then of course the all-important quick references. Life without quick references is not worth living in a game which is as complex as this. So these are very well laid out, easy to read, and there's a lot to stay on top of. I'm thinking I might produce some sort of faction cards so that I can have quick reference for my individual forces that I can just print off, and I might see about making them available. But yeah, so there you go. There's a quick overview of the two books that make up the N3 core book set. There's enough information here to keep you going for a while. I would recommend getting the Human Sphere as well, because I've only just started reading it, but it covers a whole load of stuff, really expands a lot. Because in the Human Sphere, the rulebook is tiny, but the guidebook is 300 pages. It's twice the length of this. And it really goes into a lot of depth about the different factions within the factions themselves. So it sort of goes into what makes up Pan-Oceania, what makes up Eugene, what makes up the Nomad Nation, what makes up the Ariadnan factions. The different subcultures within the combined army of the evolved intelligence. So with that book combined with this core book, you really have a hugely in-depth world which feels very real and has so much of those kind of internet style shot news. Oh, do you want to know more? Okay, it just got cut off at the end there, so I'm just tagging this one on. Thank you very much. Hope this has been useful to you. Take care everybody and enjoy.